The Handler-Instructor told us the creature had never once been calmed. He said it the way a man reads the warning on a pressure valve, not to alarm us, but because he was legally required to say it before anyone got hurt. He stood at the edge of the arena floor with his hands behind his back, his chitin ridges flush and flat, which I'd already learned meant he was relaxed. Those ridges went up when he was angry. I'd been watching them all morning the way I watch a bull's ears. The crethfall, he said, responds exclusively to threat register. It does not distinguish between prey and predator on the basis of size. It distinguishes on the basis of chemical response signature and postural load. If you produce neither, it will escalate until you do. He paused. Every cadet in the last 11 cohorts has produced one or both within 40 seconds. Nobody laughed. I was going to, but I looked around and nobody was laughing, so I didn't. My name is Darren Mace. I spent 12 years as a livestock transport safety inspector for a bulk animal carrier out of Christchurch. That means I spent 12 years going into pens, loading chutes, and pressurized holds full of animals that weighed between 604,000 pounds and had not enjoyed the journey. It is not glamorous work. It pays adequately, the hours are long, and the animals are never pleased to see you. I was at the Vastron Institute of Combined Operations because someone in the intake office had made a clerical error. My transfer certification, filed under the wrong species designation code, had routed me into an active combat preparatory track instead of the civilian logistics order program I had actually applied to. By the time anyone caught the mistake, I had already been in system for 6 days, assigned to cohort 14, and issued a uniform. The intake clerk, a small green pale Sarvan named Reloth, told me it would take 11 days to formally reroute the file. She seemed to think this was a reasonable timeline. I did not argue. I have learned not to argue with intake clerks. They are the same in every species. So I was in cohort 14. And cohort 14's third week practical was the Beast Hall. The arena was a circle maybe 20 meters across, steel floored, with observation glass running the full upper ring. The crethfall was in a holding pen off the east side, behind a heavy sliding door. I couldn't see it yet, but I could hear it, a low, resonant pressure sound, less a growl than the sensation of a growl, the kind of thing you feel in your back teeth. Oskern ran the rotation alphabetically. I was Mace, so I was near the middle back of the order. That gave me time to watch. The first cadet, a Vrethany named Dovak, solidly built, trained, walked into the center of the floor, took his stance, and lasted 31 seconds before he broke left. The creature hadn't touched him. It had only crossed half the distance between them, its crest fully deployed, and Dovak's legs had made the decision without consulting the rest of him. Oskern logged the time without expression. His chitin ridges were up about a quarter. Mild interest. The second cadet lasted 40 seconds. The third made 58, which was apparently good enough to earn a single flat nod from Oskern. The creature, I noticed, was getting louder each rotation. Each time the door opened it came out faster, crest higher, and the pressure sound started earlier. By the 8th cadet, a Kestran female who I'd watched ace every cognitive drill for 3 weeks straight, the thing was at the center of the floor before she'd taken 3 steps. She held for 22 seconds. When she broke, she went right instead of left, which Oskern logged as a separate notation. I didn't know what it meant. I wrote it down anyway. The best time of the morning was 74 seconds, logged by a Vrethany male named Sekur who had the widest stance I'd ever seen and who Oskern had told us was on track for a specialist track application. 74 seconds, and then his left shoulder had dropped and the creature had taken it as the signal it was apparently waiting for, and he'd gone over the safety rail so cleanly it almost looked rehearsed. He was fine. The medical bay was 2 corridors over. This had happened before. 14 cadets. Average hold, 41 seconds. Best hold, 74. Nobody had made 90. I was 15th. Oskern called my name and I stood up. A couple of cadets looked at me the way people look at someone about to do something they consider unwise. I picked up my field kit because I'd been eating lunch during the last 2 rotations and I hadn't finished and I didn't want anyone to take it. Oskern looked at the kit. His ridges went up about halfway. Not anger, something else. Confusion, maybe. You will not need that, he said. I know, I said. I just don't want it to get cold. He stared at me for a moment. His ridges did something complicated. Then he stepped aside and I walked into the arena. The floor was steel with a rubberized grip surface in the center ring. It was cold in there. The crethfall was already in motion before the door sealed behind me. I could hear the pressure sound starting up, that backteeth vibration, and I watched it come out of the shadows at the far end of the floor. It was large. I want to be honest about that. It was maybe 2 meters at the shoulder, 6 meters tip to tail, and it moved with the heavy, rolling weight of something that had never once in its life needed to hurry. The crest was fully deployed, a fan of rigid tissue that added another meter to its apparent height and caught the overhead lights in a way that was clearly intended to be intimidating. Its forelimbs hit the floor with a sound like dropped equipment. Its eyes were on me. I sat down. Not a tactical decision. My knees were fine. I just figured, based on 12 years of professional experience, that the fastest way to stop being the most interesting thing in a room is to be the smallest thing in the room. A bull that's looking for trouble is looking for something that looks like trouble. You get low, you get slow, you get quiet. You stop being worth the calories. I set my kit on the floor beside me and opened it. There was half a grain and protein block left and a sealed container of something the commissary called a broth, which was technically accurate in the same way that technically calling seawater hydration was accurate. I opened the broth anyway. The crethfall stopped. It was maybe 12 meters away. Crest still up. Pressure sound still running. But it had stopped moving, and its head had dropped maybe 15 degrees, and it was doing something with its nostrils that I didn't have language for but recognized the shape of. It was reading the room. I ate the grain block. It was dry. The broth helped. The creature took 3 steps toward me. Slow ones. Its crest dropped about a third of the way. The pressure sound changed register. Lower, slower. I broke off a piece of the grain block and set it on the floor in front of me. I don't know why. Instinct. When something big and uncertain comes toward you in a holding pen, you give it something to think about other than you. 11 meters. 10. 9. The crest was fully down by the time it crossed the center ring. The pressure sound had become something I can only describe as a sustained exhale. The creature lowered its head to the grain block, sniffed it for a long moment, and then looked at me from about 4 feet away with eyes the size of my fist. I looked back. I kept my shoulders loose. I breathed through my nose. It sat down. Not the way a trained animal sits. The way something very large sits when it has decided there is no reason to stand. It folded its forelegs under its body and its hindquarters followed, and suddenly there was a 2-meter creature sitting next to me on the arena floor like it was waiting for the same transit connection I was. From somewhere above and behind me, the observation ring, I heard Oskern say something in Savan that I didn't catch. I heard it twice. Then I heard nothing. The 90-second mark came and went. I know because I was counting, the way you count when you're waiting for an animal to settle. The creature leaned about 10 degrees toward me. Its breathing was audible now, slow, deep, and rhythmic. Its crest stayed down. I finished the broth. Eventually Oskern's voice came through the floor speaker and told me I could exit the arena. I capped the broth container, put it back in the kit, and stood up slowly. The creature tracked me with its head but didn't move. I walked to the door. I heard the creature stand up behind me. It followed me to the door. The door didn't open. There was a pause. Then Oskern's voice again, flatter than before. Mace. Step back. I stepped back. The creature stood behind me, crest still down, pressure sound idling at the low register. Further. I took 3 more steps toward the center of the floor. The creature took 3 steps with me. Another pause. Longer. Please remain where you are, Oskern said. We are recalibrating the door protocol. It took them 6 minutes. I know because I counted those 2. The creature sat back down at some point during minute 3. During minute 4, it made a sound I hadn't heard it make before. Short, low, nothing like the threat register. I filed it away. When the door finally opened, 2 handlers in full contact gear came through it. The creature stood up and its crest went to 3/4 deployment immediately. It moved between me and the handlers. Not toward them. Between. One of the handlers looked at me. I could see his eyes through the visor. He said something in Savan. I shook my head. I looked at the creature. Come on, I said, the way I would say it in a loading chute. No particular tone. Just the sound of something that expects to be listened to. The creature's crest dropped. I walked toward the pen door. I heard it behind me, those heavy, rolling steps, the soft percussion of its gait on the steel floor. I walked it all the way to the pen entrance and stopped. It went in. I stepped back. The pen door closed. I went back to collect my field kit. Oskern was standing at the arena entrance. His chitin ridges were completely flat, flatter, in fact, than I had ever seen them. His report, which I saw 3 days later when Reloth finally sorted out my transfer paperwork, listed my rotation result as equipment calibration anomaly, data excluded from cohort record. He did not list my time. I asked Reloth what the record was, out of curiosity. The standing record for the Crethfall practical, she told me, was 74 seconds, set that morning by Seko. Still the record as far as the official log was concerned. I told her that seemed right. She gave me a look I had seen before, on intake clerks, on loading supervisors, on every species I had ever worked around. It was the look of someone updating their internal estimate of who they were dealing with. Your rerouting is complete, she said. You are cleared for the civilian logistics order track as of tomorrow morning. Thank you, I said. I picked up my field kit and walked out. Behind me, from somewhere in the direction of the Beast Hall, I heard the pressure sound start up again. Low, slow, the idle register. The one I hadn't heard before today. I kept walking. The corridor was long and clean and quiet, and my knees were fine, and the broth had been bad, and I had a full day of logistics audit orientation ahead of me. It had been, all things considered, an adequate morning.